let's begin today's webinar, which is a two-part webinar. It's all about accelerating your e-commerce sales. So the focus of this two-part series is really about how a business can use digital marketing to grow and attract new customers and also get more sales from their existing customer base. So I would just move on. So quick introduction to myself and my experience. My name is Jay and I'm the head of new business Push. I have been working with Push for 9 years and we're a digital marketing agency that is focused heavily on performance. In the last 9 years, I spent my first 4 years managing customer accounts in different sectors, B2B, B2C, both lead generation and e-commerce. And in those 4 years, I gained a lot of experience of growing customers' businesses, finding new strategies to acquire new customers and also get more from their existing customers. And for the last 5 years, I've been working as the head of new business. So at Push, we get two types of people that really approach us. Businesses that have never employed digital before and have no idea where to start, which channel is best for them to use. And in this case, we'll put together proposals to show them the right channels they should be using, the kind of messages they should be putting out to their audiences and the best ways to reach them. And then the second type of activity to carry out is audits. So if you are already running marketing campaigns on Google Ads, Microsoft Ads, Amazon or Facebook, then we can audit this activity for you to show you the things you're doing right, the things you're doing wrong, and the opportunities that you are completely missing out on. And over that last 5 years, I probably conducted over 1,000 of these audits. And so the knowledge that I have that I can share with you today really is the common mistakes that businesses always make when they set up and run marketing campaigns, whether they do that in-house or whether they employ an agency to do it. There's lots of mistakes that everybody makes. And also what's very interesting for me to see is the businesses that are successful in digital marketing are the ones that really keep ahead. When new things come out, taking advantage of them as quickly as possible, that's where you tend to get the best results. I'm joined today by my colleague from Microsoft, so I'll let him introduce himself.
Yeah, hello. So my name is Barry Murray. I'm the Retail Analytical Lead for the UK for Microsoft Advertising. I've spent my last about 7 years working on search advertising across multiple roles, multiple kind of business sizes from SMB to global brands. I mean, essentially what we do is kind of dig into the search data, analyze user behavior across our network, across our properties, and really try and find a sense of what consumers are looking for. What's the intent behind what they're doing, and how can we take that and essentially inform businesses and let them kind of get ahead of what's happening on the platform so they can position their business in a position to I suppose respond to that, or basically drive growth in their business, or in obviously in the current climate it might not necessarily be drive growth, but really just kind of get through the current situation. So luckily I've got some good content here for you today that should kind of help you have a bit of a look into the retail e-commerce trends at the moment, and kind of give a sense of where there might be pockets of opportunity for your business, and kind of how consumers are responding to the current situation in the marketplace.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Barry. So we're going to begin the presentation for you guys, and I'm going to start by talking to you about best practices on Facebook, and then Barry will talk to you a little bit more about Microsoft advertising. Before I begin, just a few things to mention. First of all, we're very aware there's lots of different businesses in the room and everyone has different levels of digital experience. So today's content is adapted and it's applicable to both B2C and B2B e-commerce businesses. And it doesn't matter if you've done digital before or if you already have digital strategies, this content's still going to be relevant. We'll try and keep concepts as simple as possible. But if you do have any questions, if there's anything that you're unsure of, there will be details shared at the end so that you can get in touch with us, and we'll respond to all of those questions as quickly as possible for you. And anything that you miss in this webinar, we'll be sending out a copy to everybody to view it in their own time. We're taking a recording of this session. So First of all, let's just talk about what is happening currently in our industry. Well, every single platform, Google, Facebook, Instagram, Amazon, Microsoft Ads, they're all experiencing huge surges in traffic because everybody is at home. So internet usage is up massively, 50% across Europe. There's a 32% increase right now in shopping across all markets. And it's incredibly interesting, especially with Amazon. What we're seeing with Amazon is they first employed 100,000 people to cope with the level of demand that they were receiving. They slashed their budgets on Google advertising because they just simply didn't need to advertise there anymore. They were getting enough direct traffic to their website. And they recently announced they have to hire another 75,000 workers to cope with the demand. They've started to now loosen restrictions on non-essential goods. So it's definitely a platform to pay attention to. The opportunity businesses have right now is, first of all, every business is in a different situation. So there's certain e-commerce businesses I speak to, and I think this is a great time for you to advertise, but there's issues with their supplier, with their delivery, and they simply can't offer their services. But any business that is able to operate and is an e-commerce business, 100% right now, you have less competition than ever on these platforms. The second thing is, a lot of these platforms, their bidding systems work on live auctions. So essentially, the less competition you have in the live auction, the lower your cost per clicks are going to be. So the situation you have right now as a business is less competition, lower cost per clicks at a time when you have more people online than ever. And one thing I'm encouraging all businesses to consider is that although you may not be able to offer your service currently to customers, you can still be building interest, you can still be building engagement so that when the time is right for your business, you have an entire list of people that you can start marketing to and to recapture sales that you've lost during this period. The crisis has really changed the way that we behave. And what we have seen time and time again is that businesses that adapt and move online quickly will be the winners. And you look at businesses over the years, places like Toys R Us. Now, there's lots of reasons why Toys R Us did not last in the UK. However, if they had a better digital strategy, you can assure yourself that they would have lasted a lot longer. And we see it time and time again that businesses are very, very slow when it comes to moving online. Now, our behaviors have really been impacted due to this crisis, and some of those changes are going to be here for the long term. So on a recent Facebook webinar, there was a report with stats from the UK and Germany talking about the time that people are going to be spending in stores, and 27% of people are going to visit stores less frequently. And people will be adapting. There's going to be people that have ordered for the first time online, seen the convenience of it, don't feel quite safe to leave their homes just because their lockdowns in their countries are over. And so ultimately, you're going to see a lot more people continuing to stay and shop and purchase online. Now, typically what happens in this industry is technology changes exponentially and organizations change logarithmically. And we see all the time that new things will come out and businesses will be slow to adapt to them. And even if you think about university students that are going to university to study marketing, when they do these digital aspects of their course, by the time they finish their degree, everything they've learned is very outdated because the market changes so quickly. And in our agency, for example, we have to have training sessions every single week to be able to keep up with all the new things that are coming out across every single platform. And FMCG businesses, they in particular are the ones that really need to recognize this opportunity and they need to move online quickly. Now, some of them that are at the table late. So PepsiCo launched a new online shop. You can make a customized snack delivery. They're going to have so much learning to do. They're going to have to figure out which platforms are the best platforms to drive traffic to the site, which audiences are the ones that engage best with them online, which messages for each audience work best, where do they have the highest profit values from the different audiences, and how can they grow those audiences and find more people similar to them. There's a lot of learning they have to do. So really, when it comes to digital, the quicker you can move, the sooner you can get online, the better. And for those of you who are new to digital and not sure what you should be doing whatsoever, really I put the classification of platforms into two groups. Google and Microsoft ads are great for bringing people to your business. So if people know what you have to offer, or you have brand presence in the market, searching for you online, these are great platforms to capture that traffic. If you have a new product, if you have a solution to something that addresses a need which people are not aware of, then Facebook and Instagram are both great for bringing your business to people. People are on those platforms, they're liking their friends' photos, they're posting pictures, and you are interrupting their user journey. You're bringing the business to them and letting them know about what you have to offer. Whereas on Google, you're relying them to look for you. Now, in spite of what looks like an entirely new marketing landscape with the whole world of digital, actually, this is a 19th century model that still applies. And this model's adapted. You'll see tons of different versions with 5 or 6 steps. But the ADA model essentially is a basic principle for how you can market to consumers. And it's all about generating awareness, making people aware of what you have to offer, creating interest, creating desire, and nurturing these prospects down to the point where they are ready to take action and they are ready to buy from you. And companies who do this, they have a 450% increase in prospects. They see 50% more sales at a 33% lower cost. Now, let's talk about Facebook campaigns, because Facebook and Instagram as platforms, they're very well suited to be able to address each stage of the funnel. And I should highlight, in the presentation, you'll see the word Facebook throughout, but when you run campaigns on Facebook, they can automatically be run on Instagram too. And you have the ability to select specific channels, although that's not how we recommend it. I'll go on shortly. So with Facebook campaigns, a common thing I see businesses do is simply go after conversions and sales. But we have lots of evidence of businesses that focus on generating brand awareness, building an audience of people who are interested in them, and then when the time is right, running those conversion-based campaigns to then capture those sales and grow. And it's really important on Facebook that you take marketing and use that full funnel approach and test different forms of campaigns. Although this campaign is called conversions, it doesn't mean you don't get conversions from the other types of campaigns like the traffic and brand awareness campaigns. So really, when you're building your marketing campaigns on Facebook, you should be creating campaigns with different objectives. And what you want to do is build in that nurturing strategy. So if you're going to make someone aware of your brand and then you're going to drive them to your site, you want to make sure you're following up with these audiences and showing them new adverts that bring them to that point of conversion. Remember, when you're on Facebook, you weren't on there to start shopping. So not everyone is going to be ready to buy on your site immediately. And some of these people, you really have to keep speaking to them and appealing to them in order to get that final sale. Now, just an example of how you can segment the user journey. So at the very top of the funnel is just making people aware of you, your brand, how it addresses their needs. And then when it comes to how you engage with people, the main important thing to do is not treating everybody the same. So if you run an advert and drive a load of traffic to your website, you don't want to then run a new advert to everyone that visited and treat them all as equal audiences. If you're going to be smart with your budgets and smart with your marketing, you look at the engagement. So let's say, for example, you run a video advert on Facebook and you have all these people watching that video. Well, you can take the people that complete watching 75% of the video and then start showing that list of people new adverts. And this is when you start presenting the brand further. So you can be talking about key unique selling points. You can be creating desire using social proofing. Social proofing is a term from psychology. And this is really all about getting other people to prove to the consumer that this is a product worth buying. And that's through testimonials, expert or influencer reviews, and also sharing user-generated content. There are people that are purchasing your products and posting about them, and you have the option to share that on your social media as well. And then what you're trying to really build is you want people to have engaged with your brand over time, and then you want them to make a purchase. And often when you're trying to encourage action for the first time, what can help is having sales, promotions, free consultations. What we're really trying to build, though, is an audience of people who you won't have to pay to get to your website through Facebook or Google or Microsoft ad campaigns. The people that just search for your brand directly, and taking this funnel approach, that is how you build them. So it's really important when you look at marketing campaigns that you do have a budget where you're expecting a direct return and you're saying, I'm going to spend this much on these campaigns which are going to generate sales. But you also need to consider that you have to have a budget for awareness if you want to build the brand too. Now, when it comes to how you set up and structure your Facebook campaigns, this slide here is probably another entire webinar. What you need to understand is the Facebook platform, it's run by an algorithm, and that algorithm has a lot of data on us as people. You know, the kind of information we put in there, age, who our relatives are, when our birthday is, where we live, what jobs we have, what industries we work in. And then it's picking up all the different types of content we engage with, the pages that we like, the posts that we like. There's so many different things to consider. And so when you set up your Facebook campaigns, it's important not to go too granular. You have an algorithm which is trying to work out when is the best time to show your adverts, on what devices, to which people, in which locations, of which age groups, of which genders. And if you make your campaigns too granular before gathering data, you're basically diluting what you're giving Facebook. Facebook is very good at finding the right people for you. Where you should spend more of your time really is in the ad testing for different audiences. But it is a balance. So as much as you don't want to go too granular, you also don't want to make things too simple. You don't want to be mixing up different types of audiences who are at completely different stages of their user journey. And a good example I can give you is a brand that was advertising, and their key demographic was 40 males over 40. And they were saying, how do you reach a younger audience? Well, in that one campaign, they had interests which were for the target group of over 40s, but they were also mixing up interests of younger people as well. The Facebook platform is simply looking at, well, where do we get the most sales from? And serving adverts more often to the 40+ market based on those interests. So in order to really reach the new segment and test and understand how to get sales from them, you have to separate them out. So structures are very complicated, but it's important that you're reviewing and analyzing the results and seeing if one group is being prioritized, but you want to reach another. That's where you can start separating things out. There's also the different placements. Some people will separate or remove different placements without the data to justify that. So we recommend let Facebook identify which placements work the best for you. And then you can take those learnings and build new campaigns based on that. Even with the bidding, the best way to bid on Facebook really is to use their own campaign budget optimization. Let Facebook do the work for you. Start thinking more about strategy, start thinking about more about how you can create adverts that are going to appeal to your different audiences. So the different bidding strategies on Facebook, traditionally, 90% of accounts I see will just use lowest cost. And what you're telling Facebook is, I want to get the lowest cost per click possible. Makes sense. You're trying to get as many sales as you can. But what Facebook is doing is saying, well, how do I get the lowest cost per click? And it's ignoring customers that might be of high value to you. And when it's taking all these different bidding signals into consideration, it's trying to lower the cost per click. So it will cut you. It means it won't show you in certain places on certain devices to certain people. And actually some of those people might have been willing to buy from you. So I recommend start with lowest cost, but test other bidding strategies, in particular the target cost per acquisition. If you know how much a customer is worth to you, both in terms of the immediate value and the lifetime value, then put in that target cost per acquisition and let Facebook find those customers for you at that target cost. You'll know very quickly if it's not able to do it. Within a couple of days, you'll see if it's not meeting that target cost, then it's not able to achieve it. And you might want to try another bidding strategy like return on ad spend bidding strategy. The key thing that people make when they do, the mistake they make when they do have target cost bidding in place is they don't then give the campaigns enough budget. So on both Google, Microsoft, and Facebook, whenever you run a target cost per acquisition campaign, you're asking the platform to get you customers at a certain cost. But what you need to consider is you need to give the platform enough data to work with to do that. So if your target cost per acquisition is £20, but you're giving the campaign £5 a day to work with, it's going to take a long time and a lot of data to figure out how it gets customers at that cost. So yeah, always multiply your budget by at least 4 or 5 times when you're using that bidding strategy. And when you're putting in these different bidding strategies, you can set up automatic rules. So when it comes to saving budget and making sure you're not wasting money, you can set up rules to say, I'm going to run this campaign, but if I spend X amount and I haven't had any purchases, just pause it for me automatically. And then there will be opportunities that you don't want to miss out on. So for example, we have a customer that sells rainwear and raincoats and boots to children. And there was a day in August where it started raining, and it was completely unexpected. But what it meant is everybody was jumping online. They started thinking about their kids and needing to get welly boots for the winter period. So by having an automatic rule in place, we were able to automatically increase the budgets on those campaigns because we saw that we were getting sales at a cost under our cost per acquisition. So it's really important to use these rules so that you don't miss out on opportunities when they come along, and that you're not being reactive, but you're being proactive with your bidding strategy. Next is the audience targeting. And what I encourage businesses to do is really try to get in the mindset of your customers and build personas. You know, you've seen some of these kind of personas people build out before, where it's, you know, Matt, the 40-year-old that likes to go for walks in the park on the weekend, or Lucy, who's into fitness and 20 years old and likes jewelry and likes different celebrities. The more you understand your customer personas, the more different ways you can target them on the Facebook platform. So whether you're B2B or B2C, you can start thinking about questions like, what is the professional role? Because we can target by job title and job industry. What other brands might they be interested in? Because again, we can target by those. What other shops do they go to? Depending on what you sell, it might be of interest to know what kind of TV shows or movies do people watch? What publications do they read? So for business owners, are people fans of the Financial Times or Forbes magazine? And what areas do they live in? Because you can target by geography, you can target by age, demographic, lots of different ways. And what you're essentially trying to do is build these personas, test these different audiences out, and find where the key audiences overlap, and then target those specific audiences more heavily, start placing more budget on them, bid more aggressively on them. And that is how you start to scale and deliver a higher return on advertising spend. Now, different types of audiences you can also use in the platform. So there's the interest targeting. There are tons of interests that you can go after, but you can, if you have an existing email database, upload that database into Facebook, and it will find that emails, it will match them up to their Facebook profiles. So you can then run ad campaigns that specifically target those people. So this is a way that you get more from your existing customers. And you need at least 1,000 people on that email list. But if you have a very large email database, what you then want to do is start segmenting that. Because again, not all of your customers are equal. There are going to be customers that spend a great deal of money with you more frequently that you might want to spend more advertising to. So it's really important to segment those databases and target people differently. And just an example, so this is an e-commerce customer that sells honey online. They have a database of just 5,000 people, but they increased their return ad spend by 42% by uploading that database into the platform and targeting those existing customers, encouraging them to come back and make a purchase. And then one of the best tools on Facebook is the lookalike audiences. So as I mentioned earlier, Facebook has tons of data on us, and it has a very sophisticated behavioral modeling system. It's excellent at finding similar people to the people that buy from us. So what you really want to do is take your most valuable audiences and find more people similar to them. And with the lookalike audience options, you can set different percentages. And again, most people I see will set it at 1% and say, find me the people most similar to people that buy from me. Well, actually, once you've exhausted that, you can go broader and say, well, at 1%, I got great result. Let me test 2%, let me test 3%, measure what kind of cost per sale and return ad spend you're getting, and keep going broader until you think this is not profitable for you. The other thing people make the mistake of doing is when they run lookalike audiences, they just do it on people that purchase from them. But actually, what you should be considering is that there will be other people that will be engaged who could purchase too. So people that abandon the baskets, you can build lookalikes of those people. It'll be a bigger list to target. People that have had high engagement on the site. So someone that spent 5 minutes browsing on the website, build lookalike audiences of those people as well. Again, though, when it comes to your structure, just make sure you're keeping that different audience intent separate and not putting it all in one campaign. If you have a campaign targeting people that are past purchasers with people that were high engagers, spent over 5 minutes on the site, it's just going to prioritize the past purchaser list, and you're only going to see results from that audience and not reach new people. And just another example, so a jewelry brand that ran lookalike audience campaigns had a return advertising spend of 400%. So 100%, if you're not running these types of campaigns, start testing them. And if you are running them, test different percentages and test different lookalikes of your purchasers, website abandoners, people that spend high time on site. Then with the ad testing, there's tons that you can do with ad testing on Facebook. And sometimes I'll see 2 or 3 different ads, but they'll be the exact same type of ad. It will just be the image that changes. But there's a lot of testing you can do. And this is where you can make a true difference to your performance. So in terms of the creatives, you have the different product images, carousels, testimonials, long and short videos. All of those different advert types can be tested across different audiences, across different placements. And you can do that for each campaign objective. So Facebook is the type of platform where you can stick some budget on it and see a result. But if you're looking to really grow and scale and to control it, you need a good testing strategy in place. You've got to plan this before, you've got to set it up. What we encourage businesses to do, and what we do, is we have a bank of adverts ready to go. So again, we're not being reactive. So when we start with a new campaign, we have tons of different adverts ready to go in that split test. The minute we find a winner, we've got a new one to test against it. And then we're taking those learnings. Which type of adverts worked best? How do we make more based on those same types of adverts? And an example, the new format called the collection ads. And you can see this example here with a brand we work with called McQueen's Flowers. So very, very visual, lots of images that you can use within the advert, slightly different to the carousel advert. You're scrolling through products on one ad. And just an example, so testing this new ad format and testing different messages, we increased the click-through rate, which is the percentage of people that click our advert over others, from 0.92 to 4.8%, and the cost per click dropped from 36 to 7 pence. So huge differences in results just from testing new adverts. And then there's the story section. So videos are incredibly cheap on Facebook. Last year, the overall cost per impression for businesses across the platform actually increased, but videos is where we saw the opportunity because the cost per clicks and cost per impressions were so low. So here's an example of a brand targeting story adverts, and they were able to decrease their cost per impression by 39% year on year. And then we also were able to see differences in the different platforms. So on Facebook, they were getting a cost per acquisition of £13, on Instagram, £15. So we let the platform do the work, we had them both together, and then we were able to separate them and put more budget into Facebook later on. Now, remarketing. Most businesses are using remarketing now. Very few that I see that don't implement some form of remarketing. But for those of you who don't and don't know what it is, let me tell you. Remarketing is those adverts that you see that follow you around the internet everywhere you go after you visit a website. And there are people that tell me they hate them, they think they're annoying, they don't like them, but they work. And what I can tell you is if your business is not there, you can guarantee another business is going to be there. So it's up to you if you want to let your competitors steal customers away from you or not. You can cap the frequencies. You can make sure they're not too annoying. You can appear for a certain number of days and a certain number of times, but you've got to think about your own user behavior. Every single website that you visit, do you buy it? Do you take action on every single one the first time you go to it? Depending which sources you look at, conversion rates, on average, overall across all industries, they vary from around 2.7 to 3.4%. So 96% of traffic not taking action the first time they visit a site. And that varies from industry to industry as well. But it's incredibly important that you are front of mind and that when people are ready to take action, it's your brand they remember. Now, the key things to do with remarketing strategies, as I said before, don't treat your audiences the same. Most people will just target all visitors. And If I spend 5 minutes browsing on your site, maybe add something to my basket, I'm far more valuable than someone that left after 10 seconds. So it's really important to segment your user lists by engagement, by the actions they take on the site. And with remarketing, a lot of people just tend to just show a general banner of the brand. Say something new to people, give them a reason to come back to your website. And that doesn't always have to be about sales or promotions. It could just be interesting things about the brand, key unique selling points. A type of remarketing you can run is dynamic remarketing. So you're literally showing people exactly what products they looked at before. And you can even segment by category pages. So if someone came on a page and they were looking, let's say it's fashion, they're looking at t-shirts, you could show them other t-shirts. It doesn't just necessarily have to be the ones they viewed. But you can run remarketing actually across all platforms. So on Google, Microsoft, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and it's incredibly powerful. So I encourage everyone to use it. And I've got an example of a golfing holiday brand. They increased the volume of inquiries by 318% just by implementing a remarketing campaign. So finally, before I hand over, 7 quick ways to engage with customers during COVID-19. So just some tips for the kind of content that you should be putting out right now to your audiences. And this isn't just through your adverts, it can be on your organic posts and your emails as well. First of all, I saw a lot of businesses trying to ignore the topic on everyone's mind and acting like this crisis wasn't happening. Big mistake. I saw a money transfer brand that wrote an article about moving to a different country. It had a picture of women out shopping in the streets when everybody was on lockdown. And it just was really poor marketing, to be honest. The marketing campaigns that are succeeding are the ones that acknowledge what is going on. So you've probably seen, I think it's Domino's that launched an advert all about staying in and having a date night. So they're not directly addressing the coronavirus, and there's nothing negative in the advert. It's simply adapting to what is happening in people's lives right now. You can be really creative with marketing. So it's funny, the date night idea was an idea from Domino's, but on a previous webinar I had the idea and said that we could use this for makeup brands or for fashion brands to say, you know, if you're a woman at home or a man, if you wear makeup and you want to treat yourself, you want to have a date night with your partner, encouraging people to get creative, plan their own date nights, get dressed up, put on your makeup, put on a nice dress for it. And so, yeah, Domino's have used that idea, but you might have heard about the Don't Rush challenge that was covered in the BBC. So it went viral because of a few nurses. So there were British nurses, and the challenge was essentially there's a song playing in the background, and a woman or a man will come on screen and they will not be dressed up. They won't be wearing any makeup. They'll put the makeup brush into the screen, blur the camera, and then when they take it away, they're fully glamorized. So imagine if a makeup brand had come up with that concept. It would have been massive for their sales, but unfortunately it was an idea that just went viral through TikTok. But certainly be creative about how you can encourage consumers to still purchase from you, and also just keeping at the front of consumers' minds. Definitely spread positivity. People need positive news. They like positive news. Some of the most popular pictures on Facebook and Instagram are cute babies and dogs, images that just make people smile. And I've seen lots of different brands simply just post an image, say, you know, have a great weekend, or top tips for things to do when you're staying this weekend. Nothing to do with selling their product, simply just trying to support people through this period and build consumer loyalty. Get customers thinking about the future. So I've seen some restaurant brands, what they've done is, for example, when the restaurants were closed, they were sending out recipes for the top dishes that their customers would buy, giving away these recipes, you know, reminding customers that we look forward to welcoming you back to our restaurant once the restaurants are open again. Showing concern for safety and support. Everyone's attitude towards this is very different. You have people that are terrified of going outside, and you have people that are not so fussed. So for those people that are nervous, it's important that you make sure they feel safe if they're going to purchase from you. Let them know, you know, things like the contactless delivery are really important for them. So make sure you address any concerns. And do that on both your website because you're sending traffic there. They want to see you're taking the right precautions, and do that through your marketing messages as well. And showing how you're supporting your staff and taking care of them as well. That's always great for a brand to show too. Be open and transparent with them. If your delivery times have changed, if you're not sure you can necessarily meet the demand, keep in touch with your customers, keep them informed. Everybody knows we're in difficult times and that situations are difficult. So it's really important that you are open and transparent with people, and they will respect that. So finally, I've talked a lot about Facebook, and you might come away with this thinking that's a great platform. I want to set up campaigns on there. But one thing to leave you with before I pass over to Barry to talk about Microsoft is businesses that use 3 or more channels. They have higher purchase and higher engagement rates. So Facebook should just be one part of your digital marketing strategy. There's lots of other platforms that you should be considering. And I'm going to hand over now so that we can talk a little bit more about Microsoft Ads.
Thanks, Jay. So yeah, I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about what we're seeing in the Microsoft Search Network, some of the trends that we're seeing kind of ramping up post-lockdown, pre-lockdown, and just kind of what we're seeing shift in the mindset of consumers. So we move on. Okay, so just I think it's a good idea to just set context about when we talk about these trends, what sort of scale are we talking about? So I mean, in terms of the Microsoft Search Network, 376 million monthly searches in the UK, so a significant chunk of searches, 21% PC market share in the UK. We have 122 million unique monthly searches in EMEA for those who have cross-market brands. And then 825 million Windows 10 devices globally. So it's a significant reach. When we're talking about these trends, they're not micro trends that are popping up in the industry. These are things that are a significant shift in consumer mindset, and we're seeing it reflected in the search data. So, I mean, the big thing that from digging into this data, as you can imagine, there's quite a significant chunk of data. I spend a lot of my day digging through numbers and queries and categories and trying to understand, what's behind the intent of these consumer searches. And the biggest thing that you can see is, people are adaptable. We're not seeing people kind of stick to the norm throughout these difficult times. They're not sticking to what you would presume is normal. They're finding new ways of adapting, new ways to cope with the concept of, isolated living, of everything changing in their daily lives. And we're seeing this reflected really strongly in the search data. And from digging through, I kind of break it down into 3 different themes. One is the new normal. People are having to completely adapt the way they just go about their daily lives. We're working from home in a lot of instances, adapting to just being at home all the time, and adapting to having more time. What are they going to do with that extra time they have? So that's one. Environmental awareness is the other. So this essentially, you're stuck at home, you're looking around, you become a bit more aware of your surroundings, like, what do I have hanging up in my house? Things like that. And there's this desire to change what they have in the house now that they're there, spending more time, becoming more aware of their surroundings. And then the other is personal care and appearance. I think with a lot of people, they might have kind of outsourced or gone externally for a lot of like personal care or health services. Now they're kind of taking that indoors back into the home, and we're seeing that reflected. And people are spending a lot more time on their health and fitness. And that's quite a really significant spike. Actually, it's one of the larger ones. And then oddly, a lot of time spent on appearance as well. I think you might presume that people are stuck indoors, they're going to see no one, they're not going to spend a huge amount of time. But that's actually, we're seeing quite a lot of time spent on personal appearance and image from searchers as well. Ooh. I think we might have lost slide there. Apologies. There we go. I'll have to apologize. I'm quite new to Zoom. So when we dig in, let's dig into these three themes. So let's have a look at the new normal. So in terms of what the new normal looks like, we've got some key trends, some key things popping up that I'll share with you. So one is working from home. People working from home, what are they searching for? And then adapting to home life. Now that they're home, what are they searching for? Things like groceries and food are two of the big key themes. So if we look at the home office, like working from home, we saw these categories spike really significantly. And just before lockdown was announced, I think there's quite a bit of kind of media murmurs, and it drove people to kind of preempt what was coming. And we saw the activity pick up just the week before the lockdown was announced. The biggest kind of category you can see there is office chairs. Now, it looks like everything else might be quite normal there. Office chairs is a significant year-on-year increase. That is 2,000%. It's huge. So while everything looks flat there, it really isn't. And when we look at what that means from like a pure year-on-year growth, if we look at the year-on-year growth pre-lockdown versus post-lockdown, what sort of rise in interest have we seen? Office chairs is super significant. Like that's over 1,000% increase in interest year on year, which is, it's massive. And I mean, I think it makes sense if you think of people working from home. A lot of people will be working from home for the first time. They might have a desk that they can work on already. They might have brought a lot of their equipment home from work, like laptops, headsets. But an office chair is something that, unless you're working from home full time or used to it, it's something that you probably wouldn't have in your house, or it's more unlikely. So I think the trends kind of match up. But I think that's an important way of kind of approaching some of these themes. If you have a product, a vertical that you're thinking about, thinking, how should I approach this? What are people searching for? What's the trend? If you kind of put yourself in the mindset of the consumer and kind of think of what would be their normal situation, you can kind of you can get to a point where you can kind of make predictions about what they will and won't have, or what they need, what will their behavior be. I think they're often things that can really help when planning and driving a campaign. So I think that's just something to bear in mind if you're trying to get ahead of some of these trends, because one of the things that we're seeing is a lot of these trends are changing weekly, because they might not necessarily be permanent trends. It's something very hard to predict until you have the data, and of course when you have the data, you're past the trend. So I think that's a good kind of thing to keep in mind, is try and put yourself in the mindset of the consumer and what they might need, and what behaviors they might be taking as a result of the current situations. So if we look at groceries, this is another one that we saw massively increase. And not necessarily the actual individual categories. People weren't necessarily searching for food or beverages or supplies as such. Like, there was an increase, but the biggest spike was people looking at, where can I get my online grocery delivery? They didn't know. They were trying to figure out who is supplying this service during this situation. So it wasn't necessarily branded queries, but more generics that drove that spike. And that's another important theme that we see throughout, is that when people don't necessarily have that brand loyalty, or when the situation is so uncertain, rather than search for, is this brand doing this, they just throw out the generic query, which is a huge opportunity, I think, for other advertisers to have that brand presence, and get in there at the kind of, we'll say, mid-level of the funnel, where people know what they're looking for, they just don't know who's going to give them it. So I think that's a good opportunity for other advertisers to get in there ahead of the curve and get that presence. And in terms of in terms of the year-on-year growth change pre and post, we saw obviously the biggest one there in online grocery delivery. Now, we did see the increase in other categories as well, but by far the largest was the generic online grocery delivery queries. So if we look at, we covered two of those topics, working from home and adapting at home. The other one is adapting to time. Obviously you're stuck indoors. You might be used to going outdoors, going for a trip, going to a restaurant or something, but now people are stuck completely indoors for the most part. And they're spending so much more time on hobbies and leisure, and also consuming media, which is obviously what you might presume. And in terms of hobbies and leisure, we saw a pretty drastic increase in most kind of hobby and leisure categories of queries. And that's actually, I'll call this out now. I should have called this out previously. Apologies. The queries that we use in these analysis are commercial intent queries. So these are queries that are directly relevant to advertiser businesses and campaigns. These are things that you can physically bid on in keywords, or have campaigns targeting if you have a matching business for these categories. So that's something to flag. Also, these are categories of queries, not individual queries. I probably should have said that at the start. Apologies. But the main inflection we saw with hobbies and leisure was around cooking, arts and crafts, and toys and games. Obviously, with schools out or kind of changing their way of working, a lot of working parents might have kids at home, and they're obviously trying to keep them busy. So we've seen a large inflection of arts and crafts and toys and games queries. Interestingly, gardening took off as well, really aggressively, and especially during the Easter weekend, but we're now seeing a slight dip in that. I'm predicting that's due to, we haven't had fantastic weather this last week, but that is changing now. So we might see that trend continue upwards again. And musical instruments took a huge spike, but I mean, that could be more of a transient trend, as it's kind of like sometimes they're one-off purchases. You wouldn't continue buying musical instruments. I personally would. I have several guitars, but not if you weren't me, you might not. You might buy one or two, and that's kind of you. So that trend might be decreasing now at this stage, and it's important to think of these trends with that sort of lens. But cooking and toys and games and arts and crafts continuing that strong kind of trend upwards here. And then if we think of that from post and pre-COVID, like what was that growth? The big, I mean, they're all up massively post versus pre. So, but I mean, the three to look at: arts and crafts, toys and games, and cooking. Now, I mentioned consuming media. It was something that people are focusing on more and more. This is data from GWI quite recently in March, of where people are actually spending that time when they're consuming media. Like, obviously, news coverage is the biggest. Everyone wants to know what is going on with the current situation. But TV streaming services, you might expect that as well. Social media, video games, music streaming services as well. But what we're seeing this reflected in the kind of commercial intent searches for media devices. So those trends we're seeing are reflected quite kind of like for like in the searches that consumers are making as well. So that's actually probably I suppose a good tip, that if you're trying to find this market data and you might not find the exact one you're looking for, if you find some reputable sources like GWI, for example, who have done a study, and you see an increase in where people are spending their time, it's quite likely that you're going to see that reflected in search results as well. So it'd be good to angle your campaigns to match that, what you see. But yeah, so the biggest growths we've seen, games consoles. Now, I would point out there's a lot of noise in games consoles at the moment, with new PlayStations and Xboxes being teased and talked about released. That was actually stripped from this. So it's still a really significant amount of growth. Audio products like earphones, Beats, speakers, quite a large inflection just before lockdown. And the same with like the likes of tablets, DVD players, digital assistants, TVs. Interestingly, the bulkier products, there's not as much of an increase, and that's predominantly, I would say, due to supply chain constrictions. So that's another thing to bear in mind if you run a business that relies on that. This is quite an interesting piece that I kind of dug out. So I took a sample of accounts across our network, and just kind of had a look at, how are advertisers responding to this crisis in how they structure their campaigns. And it's quite a shocking figure. Like only 59% of accounts have changed any sort of ad messaging in response to the current situation. And that's looking at March, May, and up to the 15th of April. That's a huge figure when you take that into consideration. Like nobody has changed their ad messaging in response to the situation. Like, well, 41% haven't. And I think that's something. I mean, Jai mentioned it there as well. I mean, the strength of positioning your message in response to this crisis is something that's really kind of, I think consumers pay a lot of attention towards, and it resonates with them quite a bit. And we have some kind of data here as well that will kind of back that up. But I mean, it really is key how a brand responds to the crisis. And sitting back and taking no action is not a good approach, and it's not going to pay off, basically. I mean, this is from Global Web Index again. They did a couple of surveys, and this is so UK specific. There's 74% of respondents approved of brands running any sort of advertising that shows how they're responding to the crisis. So that's a huge percentage. They essentially approve of that. It's critical to them. And then 65% think that the brand's response will actually have a huge impact on the likelihood of purchasing it from them in the future. So I think that's a huge kind of thing to bear in mind, is to have some sort of messaging, to be sensitive to the messaging that you're putting out there with the consumer. To kind of be careful with that brand awareness that you're garnering in the marketplace, because right now, especially when consumers are spending so much more time online and consuming media, that it's such an important thing to be on point with, because it's being noticed and it's being appreciated as well, with 74% approving. So I mean, it's just a huge thing I thought I'd call out, that I'm seeing kind of. There's definitely gaps in our marketplace, but how advertisers are managing those campaigns, it's something I would say to stay on top of. So we look at the third theme now of environmental awareness. Kind of breaks into three kind of areas, I would say. So cleaning and maintaining. People are more at home. They want to clean, maintain their homes, because they're essentially stuck looking at it. Then you have change of surroundings. Again, people are at home, they're looking around, they're seeing kind of how they're decorating their house, and they want to change things up. And then you've got home improvement. People are stuck at home. For maybe super active people who are used to doing things, they want to change things, or even just anyone that's sitting at home, thinking, I want to change that. I'll do that chore that's been sitting there for a couple of months. Time to get on that. So we'll dig into these a bit now. Let's have a look at the first one. So the one thing we saw reflected in trend, well, not the one thing, but one of the key things, that people are being a bit more house proud with their searches. So we're seeing increases on things like paint, huge increase on paint, actually. Washing and cleaning appliances as well, big increase on that. And interestingly, I know with paint, there was quite a supply chain challenge for that. So they ran out of supplies, but people were still continuing to search. But we also saw kind of an inflection then in wallpaper, where if people couldn't get paint, wallpaper was increasing, which was quite an interesting point to see. And I think it's kind of true in consumer behavior. Like if they can't find one product, we generally see a lot of the time they go for a similar product to kind of plug that hole, to make, because they have a need for that product that needs to be filled, so they go after it. So that's something also to bear in mind, that if you spot gaps or you spot situations where your product might suit the consumer need, it's definitely somewhere to push for it. But in terms of year-on-year growth, the paint was the big one. Again, we did see that kind of less of a growth in bulkier products. And again, I think that was predominantly due to supply chain challenges in the marketplace. The interest was there, but people knew that this isn't getting people, we can't get this because it's out. There's a lot of news and media coverage of supply chain issues, and that it was reflected in search. If we look at the next one, people are looking at their surroundings more. This was quite an interesting one, actually. Furnishings. So we saw a massive increase in furnishings. I've actually kind of normalized it a little bit for this graph, so it can be shown on the same graph, so we can see the trend. But across all markets in Europe, we did see that increase in furnishings. Interestingly enough, over the last few weeks, furnishings dropped around week 15 in Europe, and in the UK it continued. People were still searching for furnishings, so they stayed on that trend a bit longer, and we're seeing that bit of a downturn in furnishings. I predict that's probably due to the fact that there's talk now of raising restrictions. People want to get out, and they're maybe like keeping money, like saving money now essentially as well because of the current situation. So that's probably why that's dipping a little bit. We saw a big increase in gardening and patio searches as well. That was a big spike for Easter weekend, and we did see a continuing growth there. A bit of a decline with changing weather, but we are seeing really good strength in like lights and lighting, bedding, flooring, furniture. People are starting to pick up again on that, and we're starting to see an increase year on year in searches in those areas. And when you look at the kind of year on year growth, what we're seeing, I think for furnishings, the predominant driver was blinds and curtains, which picked up at the start of lockdown. So I think people were realizing that they could see in each other's windows and decided, nope, I want some blinds up or something. So big increase there. And garden and patio was driven quite heavily by garden furniture, as people were trying to get a little taste of outdoors when they were locked in. So if we move on to the next one, we've got so I mean, we mentioned people are trying to improve their everyday lives. We saw an increase in appliances and efficiency driving appliances. So things like cooking appliances, food makers, preparation appliances, huge increase in coffee makers as well. And that we saw a pretty aggressive increase, around 70-80%. But this kind of worked across all of these verticals. We saw quite a similar trend. As you'll see here, all around 50-60% increase as soon as lockdown hit, with heating and ventilation, things like fans, freezing units actually not increasing a lot. But I will say freezing and fridge units increased quite a bit just before lockdown, because people kind of saw what was coming and bought quite a lot. But again, these are quite restricted by supply chain situations. So that's kind of why they didn't follow suit with the smaller, more compact appliances. And then we look at personal care and appearance. So I kind of think of three areas here. Personal care, we mentioned before, they might have to home service the services they would have gotten externally. Health, with stuck indoors, gym access is restricted. So people are taking a huge jump there and kind of buying in gym equipment. And then personal image, they're spending a lot more time kind of thinking about how they're perceived, what their image looks like, and focusing on products that complement that. So if we look at personal care, we saw quite an increase in hair care. Now I've actually removed hair clippers from this, so it is just hair care products. And as well as that, we're seeing quite an increase in facial care and dental care. So products around those areas people are really focusing on. And if we look at the year-on-year trend, hair care is actually up really significantly, post versus pre-COVID. So that's where the focus is on, with dental care and facial next. And body care, a bit of a decrease from an earlier spike in the year driven by sales and brand campaigns. And if we look at the next, so like with gyms closed, people are restricted, they're looking for home gym alternatives. Now, this graph, I will call out this particular trend here in weight training. I've normalized that and added it back on here. The growth we saw there was phenomenal, with about 2,000% growth. On not a small sample of data as well. That was really significant growth we saw in that particular subvertical. With every other growth experiencing really good, or every other vertical experiencing really good growth as well. As basically just before and as soon as lockdown hit, we saw that trend maintain as people are stuck indoors. But as you can see, like weight training, if we take the whole period into consideration, year on year post versus pre lockdown, it's over like 1,468% increase, which is massive. And we saw the same kind of trend hit exercise machines, fitness and gym equipment, less so with sports and gym wear, but a truly massive increase in these three main categories. Which is, like if you're in that sort of a business, definitely somewhere to focus on. We didn't see the same trends in nutrition, fitness tech, interestingly enough, and running shoes, obviously maybe predominantly used outdoors, so that's kind of reduced slightly, but still strong growth. And if we look at the personal image category I mentioned, again, one massive trend here that I've had to normalize and put back on is hair clippers. Insane growth for hair clippers. It's truly massive, like post and pre-COVID. This line looks flat. It is not. That is still positive year-on-year growth. It's just the kind of size and scale of that trend is massive. We've also seen it in makeup. Clothing actually took quite a hit coming up to lockdown, but we're starting to see the kind of rebound happening in the apparel space as lockdown restrictions start to ease. And I predict that to go up as advertisers have, quite a lot of stock on hand, and they're changing their kind of coming up to where the summer sales would be. They have a lot of stock now to get rid of, so you should see some pretty significant market sales kicking in, and also quite an increase in perfumes and aftershaves as well. And if we look at what that looks like year on year, if we take the whole period into consideration, post versus pre, hair clippers are just phenomenal growth there. Makeup quite significant. Footwear and clothing, because it took such a hit, apparel is down still in this period, but we're seeing the rebound of the past few weeks. That's set to increase weekly now, I would say, and significantly so as the lockdown restrictions ease. And that is it from the trend. So what I would say is two things to keep in mind from our side from the Microsoft Search Network. We do have audience insights for COVID-19 that we share weekly. So check out our blogs. There's content that myself and the analytical leads across Europe produce, and kind of put our material up there, so it might be useful in kind of plugging into your campaigns or helping with your advertisers. Something to have a look at. And we also have as well a digital advertisers guide to COVID-19, really comprehensive set of kind of tactics you can take to manage your campaigns, to kind of get ahead of what's coming up and what kind of features to use to best handle the current situation. And it is available again on the, I think this is going to be circulated afterwards, but I would definitely have a check in on that. There's about, I think, 4 checklists on it with about 25 tactics per checklist that should come in really handy. So yeah, hopefully that's helpful. I would just leave you a few kind of key pointers of definitely, have a think about the trends that you see here and how they reflect in on your business. Obviously, with the changing situation, it's very difficult to actually predict what will happen, but I would say just more think about how the audience might react to certain economic situations or changing shifts and trends. Would they buy in bulk? Will they, if they do, will there be a following dip in interest? Will they hold back? Will they proceed as normal? It's definitely, thinking about things that way will very, I think, easily fuel the campaigns that you're running. And as well as that, there's like if with Microsoft search campaigns, for example, there's a ton of different features that you can use to kind of get ahead of that as well, with everyone kind of resource strapped for time. Features like DSA, dynamic search ads, remarketing, some of the broad features that we have there, they might come in really handy, I would say, to pull the advertising and new queries entering the auction in, because we do see a really high inflection of queries that have essentially never been typed before, query variations that you might not capture if you don't have those exact queries or phrase or broad match keywords in your account. So like things like that, definitely I would say keep top of mind. And yeah, hopefully this has helped. And yeah, I'll hand back over to, I think, Jai, you're gonna close out.
Thank you very much, Barry. I hope everyone found that incredibly useful. I'm aware we've gone a little bit over time, so I'll wrap up very quickly. Thank you everyone for joining today's webinar. Next week, our focus will be on growing sales through the Google Ads platform and through Amazon as well. So I hope to catch you next week. We'll be sending a copy of this webinar around. And as we mentioned, if there are any questions whatsoever, please feel free to get in touch and contact me. My email is jai@pushgroup.co.uk, and we'll send an email around. You can reply directly to that email address, or also contact us on hello@pushgroup.co.uk as well. Take care.